The next morning, Pard and I were some miles up the river looking for a favorable place to swim horses. We were so far above town that we had no thought of meeting the enemy, and were walking in a country wagon road that nearly paralleled the river. But while walking in the road, all was lost, for there appeared to our front, about 400 yards up the road, 3 well-mounted Yanks. As soon as they saw us, they put spurs to their horses and commenced firing. I jumped behind a tree and fired and told Pard to protect and fight. He sure did protect, but he did not fire a shot. After my first shot, I could not reload. I tried in vain and was so intent that the Yanks were on 3 sides and near, with guns pointing and hollering to drop the gun or they would kill me. They fired several shots while coming my way, but all went wild off the mark, if I was the intended one. They saw my earnest but helpless condition and seemed to have no thought of bodily injury if they could avoid it. After I dropped the gun, they called Pard in and had considerable sport out of his cowardly run. One of the Yanks said to me, "Look here, Reb, you must be a good shot. You see this haircut and ear burn? You did it, and you were lucky it is no worse, or we would have killed you. The ear don't bleed, but the upper part burns like the mischief." We were ordered to leave our guns and mount behind. We did so, and they were off in a lope. I was now reflecting on my condition and the cause of my gun not working, as I had carried it for some time, and it had never failed to work promptly. But such was to be my fate, the always dreaded confinement of a prisoner. Our captors were young, courageous, but inexperienced soldiers. They made no unkind or taunting remarks. They seemed to have no thought of attempted escape, or they surely would have rode different from what they did. Each had an army Colt in his belt, and I saw how easy I could get possession of the one that was so near me, and with it I could give my man a dead shot or a stunning blow, and at least shoot one of the front men before they could fire with any degree of correctness, and would have an even go with the third. All this would revolve through my mind, as I also thought of the brutality of such an act perpetrated on men who had shown themselves not to be of the abusive or bloodthirsty kind. And there was Pard with his back to me to consider, for in the effort, if I started, I might kill him, although I felt I would have been better off if somebody had done it a long time ago, for I thought the beastly coward needed killing. But I could not take the chances of doing it. I would feel at times that I would be better dead than in prison, and would at times feel that I was near the point of desperation. Then a little reasoning would say, all wrong, it would be brutal. So I went for some distance with this feeling, and I cannot say whether it was fear of committing an uncalled-for brutal act, or was it pure cowardice that I did not attempt to escape. Pard was much mortified at being a prisoner, and was scared at his probable fate. As the Yanks soon found, he was a weak subject and had no control over his fears, and was very anxious to explain. They put a number of questions to him, and got about a correct report of our doings. When we struck the main road, we were ordered to dismount and walk ahead. The road was wet and muddy. Pard and I were walking side by side, and when the Yanks would ask a question and Pard would start to answer and explain, I would punch him with my elbow. They did not order me to stop, but seemed to enjoy the punching, so this left it with me to punch and curse at will, and several times I sent him staggering and groaning nearly across the road by a good hard elbow punch in the rib. We crossed the river near the edge of town on a pontoon bridge, and were taken near the center and put in the second story of a small house that had a step entrance outside, running with a sidewalk and a good-sized platform for a landing in front of the door. On this platform there was a guard, and on the sidewalk below there was one who walked post length of the building. I think I remained in this place 5 days, and there was plenty of food provided, but I had no appetite and would eat but little. I was restless, and was nearly all the time when awake, building air castles of escape. I was standing on the platform about noon on the second day when I saw the provost captain, whom I had learned by sight, coming my way with the man I recognized as the one I had captured and was then wearing his boots. I was fearful there was an investigation on, so I went back into the room and rolled bedding around me and laid down by the side of the wall, with all parts hid, and played asleep. I heard them ascending the steps and entering, and a voice saying, "Look around and see if you can find him." I laid motionless, lest the thumping of my heart, and I thought it was unusually noisy. I did not half to lay in this suspense long, when the covering was pulled from my head, and a big Dutch form bending over me said, "Here he is, Captain." The captain ordered me up and asked me if I did not have on that man's boots. I said yes, if he claims they are his, and they were mine when I claimed them under the war custom. The captain's face showed a bland smile, and he said, "Off with them boots." So in short order, the exchange was made, and I was on my feet. The captain then stated that he was going to turn me over to the cavalry regiment that my once prisoner belonged to be shot, as I had been reported of intent and acts of sufficient proof that I was going to put a prisoner to death, and by mismanagement on my part he escaped. I stood motionless, with intent gazing on the face of my judge and jury while he pronounced sentence. When he was through, he asked the Green Dutch Yank if he had not correctly stated. Before he had time to reply, I had turned facing him with uplifted fist and wild and maniacal rage, daring and cursing and calling him all hard names that my memory was gifted with. I said, "Speak, speak, and a damned liar's teeth go down your throat." The poor helpless being trembled and did not open his mouth. I think he was the most subdued subject I ever saw. The captain saw the pitiful condition of his man and spoke and attracted my attention. I faced him in silence. He said he knew the man had reported correctly, and he was going to turn me over to the regiment to be shot. The words were not more than out of his mouth when I said, in as calm a tone as I could command, "Captain, I am an honorable old-line soldier. I served in Hood's Texas Brigade in Virginia. I was wounded twice, disabled from infantry duty, was transferred to Terry's Texas Rangers, and when you have shot me, you will have committed a crime that the Hood and Terry boys will liberally revenge. For under no conditions can you take me from this prison without publicity. If you desire secrecy, you had better shoot the whole bunch." The captain stood very courteously until I was through, and turned to walk out, remarking, "Your doom is sealed. I will have you shot." I bounded to his front in a wild rage, tore the front of my shirt open, saying, "Shoot, shoot, you damned Yankee, shoot." I pounded on my breast with both fists and used all the vile curse words that I knew. When I paused in my insane tirade, he said, "If you don't hush, I will have you bucked and gagged." I turned, replying, "I will hush, for I know you are cowardly enough to have it done." He made no reply, and he and Dutchy were soon out of the room. I soon laid my plans of escape or death, as it might be, and not be shot down like a bound brute. I had worked myself up to make the attempt if I was not taken out of the prison before night. My plans were to pallet near the opening of the door and to lay and watch my time for a break. The door was not locked generally at night, as the platform and the street sentinel were considered sufficient. So at the still of the night, I intended to carefully open the door enough to look through the crack, and at the opportune time, spring on the platform, guard when his back was toward me, and throw him over the rail, run down the steps, and take to the water, and strike out downstream, and land below the picket line. All this looked possible if done quickly and courageously. I knew the river was cold, but I thought that would be overcome by largely the great bodily strain that would be necessary to accomplish the desired aim. I was going to leave in my stocking feet without coat or hat. I beckoned a newly made acquaintance to one corner of the room and confidently apprised him of my plans. He advised me against such a hazardous effort, as my chances of being shot down were many. If I did dispose of the platform guard, and if I succeeded in reaching the river, the mile or more in its waters that I would have to swim would chill me to a helpless condition, that I would be drowned. I replied that I had no fear, for the condition of my mind was such that determination had control, and as for drowning, I had long since heard it was one of the most pleasant endings, and it would happen out of sight and hearing of the enemy's hisses and scorns. When I was through, he said, "I know the captain better than you, as I have been here for some days, and he has visited prison several times. I find that he is a great hand to have fun at the prisoner's expense, and I have heard him make threats before that he never carried out. He said he was thoroughly satisfied that his intentions were to scare, and he could get up some joke to tell his brother officers, and he said he guessed he had, but it was hard on him and his men, for he did not think during life he had ever heard so much abuse as I had given those two men. and he was satisfied that the captain felt beat at his own game. He said some of the boys were telling some visitors the happenings of the prison, and they said, "We have just met the captain, and he was telling us about it and remarked, that was the boldest and most daring man he ever had any experience with." But they knew there was no intent of his carrying out the threat, as he was a nice gentleman. So the thing seemed to be a huge joke, and was being treated as such by my fellow prisoners. Under the conditions, I soon gained my composure and reason. Hope came to my relief, and by night I banished all idea of attempted escape. The captain paid us no more visits.